This was a beautiful tribute. I really loved the mixed mediums that were in there. It wasn't just in an interview style. It felt like you really knew this man with the way the filmmaker shot this. It went through his whole life, through the civil rights movement to old age. It combined animation with photography and with people talking. It wasn't just talking heads. It was voiceover with people talking where it felt like you were there. You were there, like you knew this man. I think that's the best way to shoot a tribute like this and to put it out there is to make it seem like everybody knew him with how wonderful of a man he seemed. And this is something that I think a lot of historians would enjoy because it's not one of those boring documentaries that make you tune out because it's a very personal story. You can tell the filmmaker probably really knew this man and loved him and knew we should know his story. A lot of time and effort put into this to show the passion. It really was where a little bit of everything with the score and the narration and the dialogue and the photography and going in a linear format, it makes you seem like you were there, and it really shows the devotion that the filmmaker has to this remarkable man.
I really liked between the lens, between the pictures. Um, I always say the strength of a documentary rides and dies on the subject matter. And this, when I say fascinating, interesting subject matter, lean in subject matter, this is it. Because I never thought about, I'm black, I grew up in the South, I know about the civil rights movement, but I never thought about it from this angle, as far as from the perspective of other minorities. Never thought about that, specifically Asian, specifically Japanese. Um, so that was interesting how the civil rights movement was received and perceived by minorities. Also from like photographer's perspective, like uh, telling story, telling the story through pictures. You know what I mean? I thought the combination of both the new angle in the civil rights movement and the idea of telling history through pictures, photojournalism, you t couldn't ask for better subject matter as far as piquing my interest. I also thought it was really well made as a documentary, filmmaking wise. Like I really liked the animation of the pictures at the beginning, specifically when it was like Tamio telling his story narration wise, and then it was like pictures reenacting as B-roll. I thought that was dope. I thought the pictures were beautiful that he took. Were I mean, they lived up to the hype for sure. I thought it was an important story that not enough people know about. I didn't know about, and I'm glad that I was told it, and I think more people should be told it. And that I think is the ultimate goal of a film like this. So, great job.
This was a bit far between pictures, the lens of Tamio Wakayama. I love the animations, the concept, the technique is just so beautiful to watch. And then I'm learning a lot about this talented Japanese Canadian artist and the social movement he helped document with his work and his passion. It's a great posthumous film honoring the legacy, the transcendence of their work. It's countless testimonials as well of their impact in shaping social engagement and the idea behind protesting. It's great storytelling, engaging and inspiring, and just lots of information, lots of history, and thankfully some progress has been done. But it's just sad to see how people were treated before, and it was just a great job documenting these facts from history. Too bad he didn't get to watch it, but he was very talented. I enjoyed watching about his work.
Oftentimes, we are provided with a skewed storytelling sense of history. And as we grow older, we recognize and have to essentially relearn the history that we have grown up to learn. And so, how do we do this other than watching real stories from real witnesses to take account to history. And who better to showcase that than artists who lived through that time? We have a photographer, and we get to see the lens of their perspectives. And it dives into not only these pockets of history, but it showcases the structure and sufferings that come into systemic racism and the journey between then and now. And as we are living in times that we're living now, I think it's important to remember what we have already had to overcome during our lifetimes. Because for some of us, this could be the lifetime that they come from. And so having a moment to sort of really dive into that, into the story. And the animation is really what was so striking to me. On top of the beautiful imagery, you get to see different newspaper clippings, the way that the art itself is done between the animation and the photographs of itself. It's really cohesive, it's gritty, it's raw, it's real, and just a beautiful story through and through.
Between the lenses, wow, what a journey! I mean, what a journey, because not only because we followed the life of Tamio, I hope I'm pronouncing it right, Tamio, but also because we explore what he did for his community. This short, well, this wasn't a short film. This documentary was a very illustrative piece of Asian history in Canada, a subject of which I really have no idea about. I knew about the concentration camps from the 1940s after the Pearl Harbor event, but I didn't know that happened in Canada too. And wow, very concerning. It's a very concerning subject, isn't it? Um, I have a lot of good things to say about this documentary because it's incredibly well made. I'll start by talking about the technical aspects of it because it is made at a very professional level, and I really feel like this is the kind of documentary that gets nominated to the Academy Awards. I won't be surprised if at some point we see this documentary nominated for an Oscar. It's that well made for me anyway. I love the way the filmmaker combined the interviews with photos and animations. It was very original and made the whole thing very dynamic, because some documentaries just keep with the interviews, and even though the subject might be interesting, visually speaking isn't always as engaging, but this film was very engaging in both content and execution. So I was very hooked by it, and it lasts 70 minutes, but for me it was shorter than that. I was very drawn to the story, especially because, again, Tamio's story was completely fascinating. The way he leaves Canada to go to the southern United States and gets involved in the African American movements of the 1960s, the civil movements, and the way that influencing him to search for his identity. That was quite a journey. I love that part. It was very interesting too, because there's a point in which the documentary explores how how isolated Asian people was during that time. There was no community after the concentration camps and after the Canadian government sent so many people back to Japan for no good reason. I mean, that's nonsense, but anyway. So, yes, it's a very illustrative piece, and I find, as a person who is from two very different cultures, I'm not going to talk about myself, but I can say that I can relate to Tamio's quest for identity. But I have to say I'm a Polish, half Mexican. So when I'm in Mexico, I feel like the Polish, and when I'm in Poland, I feel like the Mexican. So I never seem to fit anywhere, and I have felt like that since I was a kid, and I could relate to Temio's own conflicts as a nation, as a Japanese kid in a Canadian school, and how teachers couldn't pronounce his name. That happened to me too. So I was very connected with Tamiyo's story at that point. And then at his constant quest of finding who he is. I love it when the documentaries tell us that he went to Japan and what he did in Japan, and how even though he was in Japan, he still couldn't feel like a Japanese person because he was connected to Canada, even though in Canada, he never felt connected to his his environment, So it's very inspiring the way he used all of these experiences, all of this quest for identity, to finally create a community of other people who was going through the same experiences, and how all of these Japanese people came together and created such a beautiful community, such beautiful events. It will be very interesting going to one of those events someday. I am very drawn to Japanese culture as well. So, oh, the documentary made me want to go to Canada and check one of those events. And I was also very interested in checking more of Tamio's works because his photographies were amazing. Um, I, I think that at some point there's a point in which um, we see a book about Tamio's works, so I want to purchase that book now. It was, for a person who loves history, such as myself, it was a very enjoyable experience, and I'm very curious to see more of Tamio's works. And it's a beautiful piece. I think that it's the kind of documentary that it should be shown in schools or for educational purposes because, well, as some of the interviewed people say, they were surprised when they find out things that they didn't know about their own culture, about their own history in Canada. And in a time where we are discovering a lot of dark events from our past and trying to make a better society for future generations, a documentary like this is incredibly poignant, is very necessary. So I want to congratulate the filmmakers for bringing a spotlight at such a fascinating individual such as Tamio, and to bring such a spotlight to Japanese history in Canada, because again that's something I have no idea about it, and it's fascinating. It's a very fascinating documentary. So thank you very much for sharing it, and I wish you the best of luck the best of luck with it because it was an incredibly effort